Three.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jupiter Brain. Today we have a very special guest, someone we've been hoping for a very long time.
For an entire semester?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so we have Dr. Teo on today, who is a engineering and physics professor from the College of Engineering here at UCO. And so most known for the physics courses that you teach, so Physics 1 through now this semester you're teaching quantum mechanics, a class that I was hoping to be able to have time for, but I told myself, don't give yourself too much this semester, but I'm already hearing good things from the quantum course, the students that I know that are taking it. And so I guess just to... Do you mind talking about maybe where you're from and like how you got to UCO?
Sure. So first of all, I'm happy to be here. It's a pleasure to be here to share my experiences. So my journey to UCO is actually a very long one. It started way back in Cameroon. So Cameroon is a country, is in the west side of Africa. Mm-hmm. So I started in Cameroon. I got my bachelor's degree in Cameroon. That was in 2004. Wow. Then I got a scholarship to Italy where I was at the University of Trieste and the International Center for Theoretical Physics. So I spent 2 years at the University of Trieste and obtained my master's degrees in condensed matter physics in the year 2007. Then I applied to graduate school at Lehigh University. So I started graduate school at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. That was in 2007. I was there for 5 years. Obtained my PhD in 2012 in computational materials and physics. Then I taught 1 year in a community college in Lehigh Valley area. So I taught for 1 year as an adjunct professor for about a year. Then I moved to Kansas for a full-time position at Pittsburgh State University. So I was in Kansas between 2019. 2013 all the way to 2019.
So Pittsburgh, Kansas, not Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Okay.
Yeah, so Pittsburgh people would often confuse it with with Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But this Pittsburgh is spelled, the way it's spelled, it doesn't have an H.
Oh, Pittsburgh without the H.
Oh, the Pittsburgh without the H.
Kind of like how there's Sarah with the H or without the H.
Yeah. So I was in Pittsburgh. I started in Pittsburgh fall of 2013. Mm-hmm. I was there for 6 years as a professor of physics, all the way to summer of 2019. So 2013 to 2019.
Awesome.
So I moved to Oklahoma in 2019. So the reason why I moved here is because, again, I'm an international person. So when I was in Pittsburgh, it was a really good school, but it was a small town. So, we as international people, we travel a lot and so on. So it was not very convenient for me because Kansas City was like 2 hours drive up north. So
I understand.
Each time that I'm flying, I need to drive 2 hours.
Yeah.
If I want to go to get some African food, international food, I need to drive 2 hours. So I was looking for, like a decent city that maybe not too big, but something that could expose me more to some culture and things like that. So I was sending out my applications to different places. And one day I got a call from UCO and they said, we're interested in your background. And so I went through the interview process. And joined the department.
Wow.
Awesome. So do you live here in Edmond, or are you in Oklahoma City, or?
I think you could call it Edmond, but it's on the edge, the other side. Like, actually, it's on MacArthur and 150th.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay, nice. Heck yeah. So not too much of a drive. My drive's a little bit further. I drive about 20 minutes to school, but it's not bad at all.
It takes me about 20 minutes. 25 minutes, depending on traffic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, for me, it's basically like highway the whole way. So, yeah. But yeah, so essentially what we, want to talk about today, right, is your background, what you just went through, and how you got to UCO, which you just said, but then also maybe a little bit about the research that you've done and how you got to the research that you just published, and maybe, if there's some future research that you can talk about. And then also at the end we have like a few
like fun side questions that we're curious if you.
we got a couple of questions from the members of Physics Society. And so just to I guess preface this is Dr. Teo is actually the Physics Society
Advisor,
and is actually one of the person who inspired me to become the leader of Physics Society. I remember, what was it? It was, I don't know, it was whenever I first showed up
2 semesters ago
to UCO. I've been the president for 3 semesters now, but it was like a year or 2 before that. It's whenever I first got here. I remember talking to you maybe after a lecture that you gave or one of the Physics Society lectures.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's sort of the thing that you've been able to keep going this whole time is this lecture series.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which is sort of like the staple of Physics Society. And I remember you telling me like, hey, Physics Society needs a leader, a president. And, I was... For me, I was thinking, a leadership position would be too much for me right now. And then, I don't know, just through the first couple years, I was like, okay, well, that actually sounds like fun. And honestly, it's become one of the best experiences and best things that I've done with my life. I've just enjoyed being the leader of Physics Society ever since I started it, and my excitement and enjoyment of it just keeps getting better. So I appreciate you for for the spark that you've given me. And so if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about maybe the beginning of your research and how you got to what you've maybe just recently published?
Right. So when I first did my PhD at Lehigh University, so that was I started my research project around 2008, 2009. So if you remember very well, the Nobel Prize in Physics in the year 2010 was actually awarded for graphene.
Yes.
Which is like a single layer, flat, two-dimensional material. And so at that point, there was a spark in the interest in carbon physics, so carbon type of materials. And so graphene is one of them, which is like a two-dimensional flat material, single layer hexagonal lattice atom structure. So graphene was like one of the main, it was like the main topic that sparked a lot of interest in the scientific community. And then on top of that also we had carbon nanotubes. So carbon nanotube is also like an allotrope of carbon. So it's a kind of cylindrical geometry. So at that time, with graphene and carbon nanotube, a lot of funding was going into this area of, how do we use these materials for some technological application. So my advisor decided to let me work on a project on carbon nanotubes. So basically what we're doing is to look at how impurities, so if you dope the carbon nanotubes with some impurities, how does that enhance or maybe degrade the properties of the carbon nanotubes? So with that, I had to do some like theoretical modeling, because that was actually the first time that this type of problem was being addressed. So I wrote some computational programs using Mathematica. So most of my research was done using Mathematica. So basically I wrote some programs, and then first we came up with some mathematical equations to describe the type of system that we're trying to model. Then once you obtain those equations turn out to be too complicated to solve, just with pen and paper. So you need to take those equations and convert them into some numerical processes.
Is Mathematica like a MATLAB? Or?
It's very similar to MATLAB, yeah.
Okay.
But it's I would say it does very well when it comes to like dealing with matrices. So if you have any problem that has to deal with, like you have a matrix, like let's say linear algebra. So it's pretty good with linear algebra. So most of the time, if you ask me, most of the research was like calculating eigenvalues.
Okay.
So because when you model the system, right, you end up with some metrics. So the metrics in quantum mechanics, the matrix is an operator. So it represents, so the matrix itself carries all the information about the physical system, right? Mm-hmm. And so now you can start to get useful parameters like, let's say, the energy of the system by calculating the eigenvalues and so on. So I was dealing with some really big matrices. So some of it's like 3,000 by 3,000. So you have a matrix that has like 3,000 rows and 3,000 columns.
So and then if you multiply those together, you get what?
Right. Yeah.
So billion or something like that.
I could see that this was like pretty complicated. But again, the reason why I'm saying that it was like 1,000 by 1,000 or so is because this is about Fourier series, right?
Yes.
So if you think about a sine function, if you have a function, let's say f of x equals to x, right, which is just like a straight line. Now, it's possible to represent that function with sine waves. But you cannot represent it with a single sine wave. You need thousands upon thousands of sine waves because a sine wave is a function that oscillates.
Yeah. You mean like adding these things together
to make it like a straight line, right? So, so you need to combine thousands upon thousands of sine waves in order to make a
straight line.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So each time that you're adding more and more sine waves, you're just like increasing. So you're getting more and more into the into the correct representation of your system. So for most systems, you need to as a matter of fact, there is some kind of like cutoff. Like it gets to a point where you achieve convergence, right? So in a real system, you cannot have an infinite number of sine waves to represent your system. But what you do is that you keep adding more and more components, and then it gets to a point where if it looks convergent, so if it's converging enough to represent what your system, then you can introduce some kind of like a cutoff. Yeah. So, but again, that was the research. It led to a publication in the Journal of Physical, the American Physics Review B. So the Physics Review B is a pretty good journal. So we got it published there. Then when I moved to Kansas, so when I was in Kansas, I started some collaborations with some of the chemistry faculty members. So basically we had an organic chemist, and he was working on this type of polymers. It's called organometallic polymers. Cool. So these are polymers that have some metals within the polymers. And so he was interested in understanding the physical structure, the geometry. So the polymers are these like long molecules that are made up of repeated units. But in the real life, these polymers are not just like a straight line, right? So they have these complicated structures, So you need to know how it looks like in order to really understand your experiment. So I was working with this colleague of mine, and he was doing organic chemistry. So he was able to like synthesize these polymers. And he could do some characterization, for example, like looking at the absorption spectra and things like that. He could do this in the lab, but he needed some insight, like, okay, how does this polymer really look like? What are the active areas where it can actually absorb light?
So the absorption spectra is the spectrum of the light that this polymer can absorb.
Exactly,
right?
because the absorption is related to like how is the energy from the light, which is a photon energy. How does the electron within that polymer pick up that light, right? So it's something that is related to converting light energy into electrical energy. So you need to know, in chemistry we call it the homolumos. So these are called the frontier. So the HOMO is like the highest occupied molecular orbiter, and then the LUMO is like the lowest unoccupied molecular orbiter. And so an electron can move in between these energy levels based on the amount of energy that it gets from the photon. Now you cannot get these details from the experiment, because when you do experiment in the lab, you cannot really see what is going on at the at the microscopic point of view. So you need to do some modeling, some simulations, some quantum modeling and so on. So I was able to work with this professor, came up with some models, quantum chemistry models to simulate the structure of the polymer. And then based on my simulations, we're able to come up with some predictions on how the optical spectra would look like. And then we're able to understand the mechanisms, like how the motion of the electrons within the polymer is contributing to what is observed. So what we actually found out is that this polymer is made up of 2 units, right? And 1 unit of the polymer can actually pick up the photon. All right, and when it picks up the photon, it causes the electron to jump from 1 unit to the other unit. So it's called a charge transfer mechanism, where you have an electron moving from one system, which is called the donor system, to the other system, which is called the acceptor system. So it's called the donor-acceptor model. And if you think about in electrochemistry, so the way batteries work, if you look at the internal functioning of a battery, it has to deal with something that is related to electrochemistry. So in a battery cell, you have the anode, which is a positive electrode, and the cathode, which is a negative electrode. And then between the anode and the cathode, you have the electrolyte material, right?
Yeah.
So basically what that electrolyte does is just to move charges across. Like, it's a continuous cycle where maybe the anode picks up the electron and then transfer that electrons to the cathode. So it's a donor acceptor model where one system has to pick up the electron, one system has to donate the electron.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been, over the years, I could say I've been evolving, and I think that's the reason why physics is such an interesting, it's an interesting field, because it really gives you like a really good background that helps you to move across. So over the years, I've been able to work with some chemistry professors. I've been able to work with material scientists, just because if you think about most of these areas like chemistry, material science, it goes back to physics, because the fundamental is really physics, right? So if you go to, in a chemistry lab, even if you do something related to like some acid-base titrations or whatever, but the way most acids work is at the fundamental level, is related to something maybe involving some protons, some hydrogen atoms moving from one system to another. So like in the basic definition, they always say an acid is a proton donor.
Proton donor, yeah.
And so on. But again, at the fundamental level is the physics, the physics about the system. So with a background in physics, it has helped me to be able to walk across different areas. And I keep evolving myself in the sense that I like to learn about new areas of research. So when I first moved here in UC in 2019, at that time, the chair of the department was Professor Hughes. I don't know if you met Dr. Hughes. So Dr. Hughes was the chair.
Is he still here? Or?
He's not here anymore. Okay. He retired. But he was the chair of at that time it used to be called the Department of Engineering and Physics.
Oh.
So it was not like a full school of engineering.
And that just changed this semester, right?
It's been 2 years.
2 years.
Oh,
yeah.
2 years.
Oh, okay.
Since it became the School of Engineering.
Okay, well.
Yeah, so when I came in 2019, Dr. Hughes was the one that introduced me to, there is a funding opportunity from the National Institute of Health, where they support like fundamental research in biomedical related topics. So when I came here, he introduced me to that funding mechanism. It's called the NIHR15. It's a funding program where they support faculty members that they engage in research in like PUI. So PUIs are called primarily undergraduate institutions. So institutions where the majority of the students are undergraduates.
Yeah, UCO.
Yep. UCO. So it's not like OU where right. So I was able to apply to that program. So I proposed to use graphene as a biosensor, given the fact that it's a very flat single layer material. And if you think about most biological polymers, right, as these repeating units, so the distance between these repeating units is almost about a nanometer. And that's about the same thickness of the graphene.
Yeah.
So somehow you can use these graphene materials to engineer some kind of sensors that can be used to detect this, like biopolymers. So biopolymers are things like DNA that are made up of repeating units that are called
Nucleic
nucleotides,
acids, yeah.
or you can have something like proteins that are made up of repeating units called amino acids. So I started exploring this project. It's called, DNA sequencing using two-dimensional materials. So again, as I said, I've always been looking for ways to evolve myself. So when I took on this project, I already had a background in carbon chemistry because I said my research was about graphene nanotube. But since NIH is about something bio-related, right? So I had to come up with, okay, how can I add at least some biological component? So the easiest topic for me was to look at these biosensors because I already have graphene. If I can add some DNA or some protein and studying how DNA can interact with graphene, with the aim of identifying DNA sequences using my graphene, that's a biological project right there. So I was able to apply to that funding program. I got funded from the NIH and, so through that funding, I've been able to, I would say since I came to UCO, I've just been focusing on, material science plus biological systems. So I've been working on this project. We started from the very beginning where we're learning. So we learn as step by step. I've had so far because I just submitted like a report, like a progress report just a few days ago. And through this funding mechanism, I've been able to support 20 students.
Wow.
So 20 students, undergraduate students, graduate students. I've had at least 4 students that have done their master's thesis through the support from this project. So the impact is really significant because that's what NIH is looking for. They want you to, engage students in the research, get students to participate. Now, in terms of mentoring, one of the things that I really enjoy is to be able to, help the next generation, to train the next generation. And my research really accomplishes this mission because my research is very multidisciplinary. So it has some aspects of physics, some aspects of data science, some aspects of machine learning, some aspects. So pretty much anyone can contribute, So sometimes I hire undergraduate students even at their very first year of college, and sometimes they might feel like, okay, how am I going to contribute to this project? I don't have any background in calculus or physics or quantum or whatever. But I think if you're curious enough, if you're willing to learn, you can always find something to contribute, even if it's just like, okay, here is the data. Can you plot it? Can you do some regression plots? Can you do some statistical analysis? Calculating average values, mean values.
And that's a paper right there.
That's already research right there. So research does not mean you need to come up with something new. It's just about, okay, before you didn't know how to analyze data, but now you can write a Python script to, if you have your data in a CSV file, you can import it, do some things, calculate some average values, do some statistics.
So is all of the work that your the students under you are doing, are they related to the NIH project?
Yes, it relates to the NIH project. So this is a very...
So how do you manage that? How do you figure out like, okay, well, this person should do that, this person should do this? How do you...
Right, so that's a really good... as the project... as the PI of the grant, so I'm the principal investigator. So it means that I'm the one that is managing the project. So typically, there are so many different layers. So I assign projects based on your background. So for example, in the past, if I have like graduate students that are in the project, these are considered to be advanced students. So I usually spend maybe about a semester with my graduate students just to train them to understand like the basics of what they need to do in order to be successful, right? Then using the graduate students, I do something that is also called like peer mentoring, where now that the graduate student is here, I could put maybe 1 or 2 undergraduate students under his kind of like supervision.
Oh, that's cool.
So now I've trained my graduate students, and then he's also like working with some other undergraduates about on the same topic. So they are exchanging, interacting, helping one another.
That's awesome.
Right, so that's the way that I've been using. So peer mentoring, where students that have been in my group for maybe a couple of years, they also assist other students. For example, one of the students that I think I'm okay to mention her name is Sophia. So Sophia has been in my group probably for the past 2 years, and she's really progressed to the point where she knows a lot about the system. So if a new student joins the groups, sometimes we have group meeting and weekly presentations and so on. So if a new incoming student joins the group, if he or she has some, questions, then an advanced member like Sophia could be there to help them, maybe show them some of the resources and the software tools that we'll be using, kind of, get them to a start.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do in our lab under Dr. Lamachani.
Right.
In our material science lab is, so we were really good at this in the beginning, but it sort of faded off. But now we're getting back to it, which is meeting every week, and someone's going to do a presentation over something they've learned, or like next Thursday, I'm going to give a presentation over my research and sort of what I've learned, and maybe some of the pitfalls, and so we're thinking, okay, well, maybe we should record these.
Yes.
Right, so that incoming students, right, or even students who are who've been there but want to learn something else or can't make the meeting, right, can then go and watch that video.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, because the more I think about not only the research but also a physics society, is there's so much knowledge gained, but yet, like, being able to distribute that knowledge to incoming people is sort of difficult and is a challenge.
As a bottleneck.
So trying to figure out ways in which we can create a corpus of knowledge to be able to hand down to, like you said, the next generation.
That's a good idea.
I mean, I have a quick question, right? Because it's looking at your research, you have a lot of research that has been cited with you, and I'm just curious, like, out of all those different papers, which is like your favorite research paper so far that you enjoy most doing or you find the most interesting?
So my paper that I published in 2012, which was based on my PhD thesis, the title is called Charge Impurity as a Localization Center for That Excitant. So that paper, I mean, you can find a copy of it.
I can send it to you.
Google Scholar.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Yeah, please do.
But that paper, I think that was the first time when we actually, came up with this model of carbon nanotubes interacting with impurity. So it was a really heavily theoretical. If you actually go into the PDF paper, which I can share with you guys at some point, it's very math heavy. So it goes into a lot of details about the math, and then so I think for me that's one of my best work.
Yeah. Which I think you said that you started off as a mathematician or wanting to do math.
That's a good point. So when I gave you my background, I think I started from from university. Yeah. I didn't go back. So I can go back a little bit into some history. So back in Cameroon, as I said, is in Africa.
Hello, space travelers. Want to look sharp while bending space-time? We've got brand new Physics Society t-shirts. The clean graphic tee is just $20, and if you want to drop some Einstein-level wisdom on the back with this quote, "I have no special talents, I am only passionately curious," that one's only $25. Rep your curiosity, rep the cosmos, and support the Physics Society. Grab yours today before entropy takes over.
So the system of education there is based on the British system, which is different. But let me just explain what we have. So we have what is called the primary school. So primary school, so typically you start primary school when you are 5, right? So it's 7 years of primary school. So you graduate from primary school with something that we call the first school living certificate. So that's at the age of 12. Then once you graduate with the first school living certificate, that lets you to gain admission to a secondary school, which is 5 years. So by the time that you graduate from secondary school, you're about 17. And then after that, you have 2 years of high school. So typically you graduate from high school at 19. But just to give you a little bit of background, so when I was done with my primary school, so I'm 12, then I get into my secondary school, so between my 12 and my 17. To be honest with you, at that time, I mean, I've always been a really good student, so most of the time I was at the top of my class. But I didn't really develop an interest in math until probably when I was in my secondary school, fourth year in secondary school. So fourth year means I had just like one more year to finish. And so just to give you a little bit of background about the structure of secondary education. So in secondary education, the first 3 years are considered to be general. So, it's general studies, so a little bit of, science, art, language, and so on. Wow. So the first 3 years is general.
Yeah.
Then the next 2 years is specialized. So it means year 4 and 5, you need to choose between, do you want to go into more like, let's say, the liberal arts or more into science? Okay? So when I branch off into science, so science is where you have things like chemistry, physics, math, and so on. So when I started taking science, I want to say that my professor, my instructor was not the best. And he was, his method of teaching math was pretty hard. And so for the first time...
Could you give us an example?
I was just struggling to really follow his approach. And then I ended up not passing his class. Like I was not passing the math class. So, when I was going into my 5th year of secondary school, so during that, summer break, I really started to reflect on this. I said, what's the reason? Like, what is really the reason behind this math? Like, why is it that I cannot be successful in math? So I started thinking about it. I said, well, let me put in some effort. Like, let me take it as a challenge on myself and see if I can learn this stuff by myself. So during that break, the summer break, I picked up the textbook and I said, I'm going to start reading this textbook. So I spent so I was spending almost 20 hours a day just solving math, like reading math. I said, I'm going to take this onto me. I'm going to take it as a challenge. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to solve all the problems at the back of the chapter until I get to the point where if I get back to when school starts, I want to be the best in math.
Wow, the grit in there. That's
so
crazy.
when the school started, from that time henceforth, nobody came closer to me in terms of like my grades in math. I was just like the best. So that's how I got into math. I became really interested in math. When I went to high school, math was my favorite. So in high school, I took math, physics, chemistry, and biology.
So what math book? Was it a calculus? Was it what?
So that's a good question because the system in education, as I said, is a little different because the math that we do in high school back in Cameroon is actually the math that is done at the university. Maybe like Calc 1.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's Calc 1 and maybe a little bit of Calc 2. So everything about like calculus, a little bit of geometry, algebra, linear algebra, matrices, and stuff like that.
Okay. So
in high school, even if you look at my grades in high school, my top was in math, all right? Then the next was like, physics, chemistry. So biology, I was pretty good at biology, but it was not really like my passion. So my three favorite subjects were chemistry, math, and physics. So math, chemistry, physics in that order.
We can see that, yeah.
So math was really the top, but then when I was applying for university, I really was, there was some confusion because I didn't know, like, should I apply to major in math? Should I apply to major in physics? Should I apply to major in chemistry? Now, in the university back in Cameroon, so physics is always like, is this department where I would say it's very prestigious, right? So it's considered to be the most difficult major. So if you're a physics major, everybody looks at you with some kind of like. So even though I was really good at math, I said, well, just to have that prestige that I'm a physics major, where everybody is like.
So you found that motivation.
Now I got that motivation
That's
from.
awesome.
That's just it, nothing else. It's just like I wanted to be called a physics major.
Yeah.
You want to be that leader in math, but now you want to be the leader in
Right.
physics. Okay, that's
So I took on that challenge to major in physics, but I don't think I can regret it because, as I said, physics really has some math in it.
Yes.
So it gives me both.
Yeah.
So I get the math out of physics, and I still get my physics out of physics. So it's not like I'm losing anything.
Oh, okay. Because I see that, according to at least Google Scholar, you were a co-author in a paper in 2013
Yes.
that says that it has like over 100 citations. So it's about first principle electronic properties of arsenic alloy.
Right.
And what can you tell us a bit about that?
So that's also one of my interesting papers. But that paper, as you can see that on the paper, it has so many co-authors. So I'm not like
it has a lot. Yeah.
the paper that I talked about, which was about my PhD.
Yep, that's
I can claim like I did 100%. I mean,
You're the main author.
I'm the main person that did most of the work. Now, this other paper that has over 100 citations is also one of the remarkable, contributions that I made, but this was like a co-authorship. This paper was done after my PhD.
So it's a postdoc.
Postdoc, right? So when I was done with my PhD, one of the professors that was in my PhD committee, he was from the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Sciences. So at that time, he was, because I was an international student, and when you graduate as an international student, you need to figure out how do you move on with your paperwork? Because if you graduate as a student, your legal stay, right? You need to be in a student status, otherwise you can lose your
Visa.
Right? So he said, okay, since you're graduating and you don't have a job at this time, you could do some research under my supervision. And so I joined his lab. So he is a professor of engineering, but he is really applied physics. So he is applied physics. So at that time, 2013, 2014, if you remember very well about some optics, so the blue LED was like a hot topic, right?
Oh yeah, it was a main topic back in the day.
Right. So a lot of research was being done to try to find these, alternative materials that can emit, blue light and something. So what we did in this research is a process called band gap engineering, where you take a crystal, right, and you can introduce some impurities into that crystal to see if you can manipulate its band structure.
Yeah.
So we started with gallium nitride, and then we introduced some arsenic. So arsenic is, if you look at the periodic table, so nitrogen and arsenic belongs to the same period. It means that they share similar properties, right? So it means that you can go in a gallium nitride crystal and replace some of the replace some of the nitrogen atoms with some arsenic atoms. And by doing that, you can kind of adjust what kind of wavelengths the material can emit and so on.
Can you explain why arsenic is so useful? I understand that the people try not to use it because it's harmful,
Right,
toxic. But I guess it's used and apparently is very useful in so many different ways.
Industrial applications, yeah.
Can you maybe explain that?
So, I mean, if you think about it, so I don't think I can go into a lot of details about the experimental approaches, but my advisor, he had this lab, it's called the MOCVD lab. So it's called the methyl oxide chemical vapor deposition, MOCVD. So it's an experimental approach that is used to grow semiconductors. So basically, you start with the metal oxide, so an oxide of it that contains the metal. So here the metal is the gallium, and then using some control processes, you can isolate the metal, and then you can get a source of a gas that contains your nitrogen and your arsenic
to dope it.
Right? It's a very complicated process that has to be done under very controlled conditions. But now arsenic, as you mentioned, has it's, some concerns and things like. But again, if you think about it, this is doping. So when you dope a material, you're talking about 1 part in probably like a billion parts. So for every 10 billion nitrogen atoms, you're introducing 1 arsenic atom. So these are literally like very small concentrations. So in that regard, it's not really like a major concern. But again, outside of that, I don't think I can provide like.
So you couldn't tell us like what is the property of arsenic that it adds to a chemical or a metal or.
Well, from the point of view of like the type of research that we're doing, it has to deal with the electronic structure of arsenic, just like nitrogen. So if you look at nitrogen, in terms of its atomic structure, right? So nitrogen has 5 valence electrons. So it means that nitrogen can form up to 5 covalent bonds, all right? But again, there is something that is unique about nitrogen is that even though it has 5 valence electrons, 2 of those electrons actually behave in something that we call a lone pair. So those 2 electrons are already paired up, which prevents those 2 electrons from participating in any kind of chemical bonding. So out of those 5 electrons, it's really 3 electrons that can really form chemical bonds and so on. And so now when you're thinking about doping, there is some concerns because when you want to dope a crystal, right, you cannot just pick any element from the periodic table. You need to make sure that there is something that is called isoelectronics. So you want to pick something that is similar, right? So arsenic is kind of similar to nitrogen because they belong in the same period, so it means they have the same number of valence electrons. They have kind of like similar chemical it's just like if you look at that, let's say sodium, potassium, and so on, they have like 1 extra electron in that outer shell. So they tend to behave about the same. So that was the reason why, again, if you think about like modeling, so when we do modeling, right, the importance of modeling is that it gives you at least something, almost like a kind of a first approximation, right? So you don't want to just go to the lab. So for example, if you want to dope your gallium nitride, I mean, there might be like so many other elements that can be potential candidates, but if you want to do this in the lab, it will take a lot of time, it will cost a lot of money. But with theory and modeling, you can do some screening, like you can screen out some samples and kind of like narrow things down to say that, okay, out of all these possibilities,
this is a good candidate.
It seems like this is a good candidate. So you can screen out just with computers, right? It's not costing you anything. It's a very cheap method to, and I still do that also for my DNA research because right now, when the research started, it was really graphene, but it's been expanding slowly to other 2-dimensional materials. And so the goal is to screen out all these possibilities. As a matter of fact, one of our papers that was published with one of my graduate students here at UCO is called Adsorption of DNA Nucleobases.
Yes, I found that.
That's also one of the papers that I think I'm very, very happy about because for the very first time, we're able to characterize the surface chemistry of this new material called titanium carbide. So just using computational means, we're able to just predict that this surface can actually bind DNA bases on it. And because of that, it's been receiving a lot of citations because, it's been helpful to guide experimental studies.
And so didn't your recent publication, it show that graphene wasn't a good...
So the recent one that we published is to show, again, how you can dope graphene by introducing, so like artificially introduce defects. And those defects can help to introduce some unique ways in which the graphene can interact with the DNA. So basically by introducing the defect in the crystals, in graphene crystals, you can kind of like enhance the ability of the graphene to select, to discriminate between the different DNA bases. So defects, again, are not good, but for this particular application, it turns out that the defects seems to be giving you some advantage. Because again, most of the research So up to this point, right, all like what I'm saying about using these two-dimensional materials for DNA sequencing, this is called the next generation DNA sequencing. So it's not yet commercial, right? But the hope is that if one day this becomes commercial, like a real device that is based on the two-dimensional material, this would help to drive down the cost of DNA sequencing, because it's going to be a really portable device that you can use in a real lab setting. So in terms of technology, if you think about when the Human Genome Project, which was a project to sequence the DNA, it's been about almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Initially, the cost was over $1 million, right? But again, due to all this effort, people looking at new ways to do things.
To sequence one strand of DNA, or what do we?
So
the entire human genome. So for example, if you think about your cell, so every human cell has these DNAs that are encoded in chromosomes, right? So if you look at all the genes, all the DNAs in one strand, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the Human Genome Project is to sequence every DNA from every human possible that is available.
That's wild. And so, have you seen some of the applications of graphene that apparently are going to a commercial viability? I think I just watched a video on YouTube a couple of weeks ago that was talking about that graphene is finally commercially viable in certain applications.
I've seen some of them use graphene as filters. I've seen people use graphene for batteries. So what are your thoughts on those?
So graphene, as I said, it has a lot of prospects, right? But again, to go from, let's say, academics, like what we do in research universities, to convert this to something that you can actually, commercialize it. And so now it's not just about research, but it's about, let's say, applicability, cost, and everything. So in that sense, I think graphene, first of all, it has some applications in electronics. You could use it as components in electronic circuits.
Flexible components, because again, it's very thin. It has pretty good conductivity. So conductivity is something that we measure that tells you, how electrons can go, how fast can electrons flow through a conductor. So graphene has a pretty good conductivity. So there are so many prospects. I think in this area of DNA sequencing, even what I propose, so I'm trying to renew my grant, and I propose that it seems like graphene is going to win the race. So, so win the race, do you mean when it comes to in competing with other 2D materials?
With other 2D materials.
Yeah, because I'm thinking there's so many other 2D materials like borophene, phosphorine, silicene. Why do you think graphene will win? Because there's so many.
And really quick, can you explain the phene on the end of it? Why is it?
The phene means flat, two-dimensional.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So graphite. So what is graphite? Graphite is so many two-dimensional. So graphite is called a layered material, right? So it means that if you look at the structure of graphite, it has this atomic plane. So you have one plane of carbon atoms, and then between one plane and another plane, there is some gap.
Yeah.
And then you have another plane, right?
And that's wild, right? Isn't that held together by Van der Waals forces?
It's called the Van der Waals forces, right? Yeah. So these are very weak, weak forces.
The forces that hold a pencil lid.
Right. Yeah.
Graph.
These are very weak forces. Again, I can go into some details about, how these forces come about. But if you think about the standard forces that we know about, electrical forces, these are the plus and the minus. So this is well known. So if you think about sodium chloride, which is salt, it's mostly formed as a result of the plus on the sodium and the negative on the chloride. So those are known forces. So Van der Waals forces, they were created in order to explain why would a material like graphite be possible? Because if you think about it, the distance between the planes is almost 3.5 angstrom. So at this distance, it's too large to really form any kind of covalent bond.
What is the typical?
Typical covalent bond, because if you think about like what the size of a typical atom is, right? You're looking
Yeah.
about 0.5 angstrom, you know.
Okay.
So
So it's
covalent
like
bonds
3
are about,
times,
you know,
4
1,
times.
3 times, 4 times, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So it turns out that these van der Waals forces, again, these are called induced dipole forces. So it's a force that comes not from. So there are so many ways in which electric charges can interact. We have like monopoles, which are like single plus and minus. All right.
Yeah.
But then you have dipole. So dipole means that it's not a free charge, but it's called a bound charge. Like water is a molecule that has a dipole moment because due to the V shape of the molecule, all right,
Yeah.
it turns out that so there is a negative charge on the oxygen, there is a positive charge on the hydrogen, right? And so there is a dipole that goes from one hydrogen to the next hydrogen, and there is a dipole that. So if you add these two vectors, you get an enhancement.
Yeah.
It doesn't cancel.
It's kind of like a Hallback array.
Something like that, right? Yeah. So those dipoles, those are what we call dipole moments. It's not like
That's
a single
cool.
plus or minus, but it's just the shape of the molecule that makes it to have this very weak effect, but it can still interact, you know, electrically.
Wow. Okay, that's.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Okay. I just want one more question from me at least is that so because I heard from a lot of professors at least they say that PhD professors and postdocs usually bury themselves in research papers because they are trying to keep up with the literature because technology is evolving so fast.
Right.
So are there any interesting papers you've read like recently that is the most exciting for you?
I think that's a really good question. I've read at least 2 or 3 papers that, again, this could be a little biased because I was mostly focusing on trying to renew my grant, right? So I'm trying to look at the state of the art. Like, if I'm trying to propose something new, right, what is the current state of the art?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I read this paper. Let me see if I can remember the title, but I think the title goes somewhere along the lines of like DNA sequencing, a decade of using 2-dimensional materials or something like that. So what it was doing is just to map a roadmap where you started initially with graphene, and then it has evolved into all these, you know, phosphorine.
Yeah.
Mexine, silicene. So it shows you how the progress has been, and then it leaves like an open, like, you know, from now henceforth we don't know yet.
Yeah.
There might be some new materials that, you know, are discovered in the lab that could be used as well. So that I think was a really good paper because it kind of like shows you how the field is evolving. So
that's
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Was there maybe another one? If not, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
you can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so could you maybe talk a little bit, because I know you're so a lot of your research is in solid state physics, right? Can you talk a little bit about why materials are why materials are so important for the future?
I think that's a really good question, and if you try to understand what that takes you really to the foundation of what solid state physics is all about. So solid state physics started with there is a very famous textbook in solid state physics. It's called Solid State Physics by Ashcroft.
Yeah,
that's like a Bible. That's called the Bible of solid state physics.
Yeah, I've heard that.
To be honest with you, that's one of my favorite textbooks because the way it presents solid state physics, it starts with the struggle to try to explain why some materials act as conductors and some materials as insulators. So that's the question from the very first page.
Wow.
So the first thing was to say, okay, if you think about it, back in the days, people knew about, thermodynamics, right? For example, you have a gas. You can come up with some equations to predict how the temperature of the gas would change, when the pressure changes. It's called the ideal gas law. So people knew about thermodynamics pretty well on how like gas molecules move and so fluids and so on. Yeah. And so the very first thing that came to the mind of scientists was like, well, can I explain a solid as a gas? Is it inside a solid? Are there some gas molecules, right? Are there gas molecules that are causing something? Because what makes the difference between a gas and, let's say, a liquid is that, in a gas,
Fermi gases?
now I'm just talking like even like any real gas, like even air molecules,
yeah.
right? So if you think about in this room right now, even though we can't see it, the air molecules in this room are moving. As we speak right now, they are moving at an incredible speed of about 440 meters per second.
Meters per second.
That's greater than the speed of light. Of sound. Sorry, that's greater than the speed of sound. So gas molecules in this room are bouncing off
But they aren't hurting
moving.
us.
They are not hurting us, right?
Yeah.
Why are they not hurting us? Because momentum P is m times v, right?
Yeah.
So one gas molecule could be moving at 440, let's say 420 meters per second, but what's the mass of one gas molecule? It's pretty small.
Tiny.
It's pretty tiny. So the momentum is small, even though that the velocity is large. But again, to go back to that, that foundation. So scientists started to think about maybe in a material there is these things that are called electrons that are like gas. Like they're almost like a gas of electrons that are just zipping through the material, and then for some materials the electrons will not move, so those will be the insulators. For some materials the electrons can move, those will be the conductors. So based on that very simple approximation, they were able to predict some properties of some materials like aluminum, wood, why is wood an insulator, and so on. They were able to come up with some at least reasonable predictions. So that model is called the Drude model. So the Drude model is the very first model to explain why something is an insulator and something is a conductor. But then the Drude model has, it has its advantages, and then it also has some things that it could not explain. And so people started to look into more details. So now, instead of just thinking as a solid, as this gas of electrons, people started to think about, well, there must be some scaffold. There is some structure in a solid that is called a crystal structure. That's what gives that material its strength. So even though electrons are moving through the material, it's not just moving freely, but it's moving in the presence of this solid crystal structure where you have these atoms that make this regular lattice, right? So from the Drude model, you started with this new model started to came up like things like, the Sommerfeld model. So these are like an improvement to account for the fact that within the crystal, right, electrons are moving, but the electrons are moving within a crystal, like within a structure that you have, like, atoms and arranged in well, in a periodic fashion. So over the years, I think the reason why materials are important is because any like technology, right? Any technology has to be built on some kind of material. So the better we understand the properties of materials, the better we can engineer like new kinds of things. We can optimize, we can improve our technology. So I remember this week when we had our first quantum class, and I was telling my students that when I bought my laptops when I was in Italy, that was in about somewhere around 2005, 2006 when I bought my first laptop. That laptop, it had about, I don't remember, something like 30 megabytes. That was a hard drive.
Yeah.
And that was something at that time was considered like a really powerful laptop and so on.
The cutting edge.
The cutting edge, right.
Yeah.
But now, fast forward, maybe, 20 years down the line.
1 terabyte.
1 terabyte.
2 terabytes,
Yeah. So again, it's about improvements in materials, improvement in technologies, and so on. New ways of doing things. Even going back to this DNA sequencing project, again, if you can try to analyze the role that materials have played, right? Because this thing started as a theory, as a concept that, okay, if I have this thing that is really thin, if I can get a material that is just like under 1 nanometer in thickness, and I know that in a DNA molecule, right, these nucleotides are almost like less than 1 nanometer in between. So somehow I can try to use this graphene as to kind of engineer some kind of. So it started almost like just a theoretical concept, but it's becoming more and more useful. And I would say that, again, this is called the next generation. I'm not going to be surprised that within the next decade or so, this is going to become like a commercial something, right? And for me, I feel that's why I feel like material science is very important, and I feel like everyone should just contribute something, because I cannot do everything myself, but I can contribute, even if it's just like a drop of water in the ocean, right? So I could do something really small, but someone else could look at what I've done and try to improve it. They could ask more questions like, okay, if this is what you've done, how can I change this project? So that's how science works.
Yeah, that's why every paper is citing other
Right.
papers.
Yeah. Sometimes they call it, I forget the term, it's called
Incremental improvement.
Incremental improvement, but there is one term, it's not like random, but, again, just to say that you never know how impactful your research can be, right? Again, if I go back to my PhD thesis, right, what we proposed, so what we proposed is that in a carbon nanotube, there is something there's a quasi-particle that is called an exciton.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
Basically, an exciton is something where, again, not to go into a lot of details, but in a semiconductor, right, each time that an electron picks up energy, right, we say that it goes to some higher energy state, and then it leaves behind a hole or something, and the hole is a positive charge. And so the electron and the hole interact by means of Coulomb, Coulomb's interaction. So Coulomb it's positive and minus, so there is some attraction, right?
Coulomb coupling.
Coulomb coupling, yeah. And so in a carbon nanotube, it turns out that coupling is enhanced. Just because a carbon nanotube is a very thin, it's like almost like a one-dimensional material. So when you have a one-dimensional material, there is less screening. So think about it. In water, right? If you have water in a container, right? It turns out that the molecules at the surface have less binding energy compared to the molecules that are in the bulk. All right, so that's why things like evaporation happens at the surface, because those molecules at the surface, they are not as strongly bound as the molecules that are in the bulk. So the molecules on the surface are exposed to the outside world more, right, compared to the molecules in the bulk. So the same kind of concept applies to the carbon nanotube. So because it's just one-dimensional, the electron and the hole tends to be more coupled compared to if it was in the two-dimensional system or three-dimensional system. So in our research, we're able to show that there would be, first, very strong coupling in the carbon nanotube. And second, if you bring any foreign impurity that also carries a charge, it's even going to make it worse. So it's going to increase the coupling strength.
Oh.
Yeah.
But can you explain, because I've, at least in some parts of the paper, it says that the presence of impurity induces a redshift in the excitonic state.
Right.
So it makes the absorption peaks lower energy. So why, when impurities get added into it, the energy is lowered?
So that lower energy simply means that there is more binding. So the binding is not the binding in terms of the exciton energy itself. But it's just to say that once you introduce the impurity is going to serve as a localized center where it binds that exciton.
Oh, like a quantum well?
That's it, like a quantum well. Right. So now the exciton is not just like a free exciton, but it's bound to something.
Yeah.
So it cannot even move. So it's trapped.
Yeah.
It's trapped. So generally, when you have a free exciton, right, the hope is that you can actually use so if you think about, there is something that is called thermal detectors. So in radiological sciences, there is something that is called thermal detectors where so if you have something like so these thermal detectors, what they do is that they can emit light, but they don't emit light. There is something that is called a lifetime where you excite the electron, but the electron does not emit the light until after a specific period of time.
Before it decays.
Before it decays, right? Yeah. So it means that the electron gets excited, but for example, if the electron gets excited and then it drops back and then just gives us the light, this would be like, for some processes, for example, that lifetime could be nanoseconds. So it means that the electron goes up and comes down immediately, right? But for some systems, that lifetime could be maybe hours.
Whoa.
So it means that you can excite the electron and then it takes about an hour before it releases the light. So you can use that as some kind of a detector.
So it takes an hour for it to go back.
For it to jump to come back to that ground state.
Weird.
So how long is the lifetime of the excitons that with and without impurity?
Again, I think it depends on
The kind of impurity.
it depends on the kind of
amount of impurity.
Right. Yeah. In this research in particular, we're not able to like estimate what the lifetime would be because we're just focused on demonstrating.
What is your guesstimate?
I think, based on my understanding,
Of excitons?
it's mostly in the I would say nanoseconds to microseconds range.
Wow.
Yeah, nano to microseconds.
It's crazy. You're manipulating stuff on a quantum level.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's crazy.
So I just want to say, Dr. Taylor, it's 2:13. Are you able to go
Maybe
for
a
little bit
few
longer?
minutes longer. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool. Then I want to
Some Discord questions.
Yeah, let me ask the Discord question, and then me and Albert
We have exciting questions.
had a question of a topic that we were talking about earlier.
Sure.
So Emily asked this, says, let's see here. Which class have you taught is your all-time favorite to teach?
My all-time favorite class to teach. You mean like here at UC?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say PSC 1.
PSC 1? Okay.
Oh.
I would say PSC 1 because, like, again, this is like a very foundational class. And I want to make sure that, our engineers, our future engineers, I want to make sure that they develop a pretty good foundation in physics. Because with that, I think, if they can develop a pretty strong foundation in physics, it sets them up for success.
Yes.
Yep,
along
that's
the
true.
line. Yeah, so
Yeah, I had a really good physics professor over at Rose State,
Right.
and I really think that helped me just gain more curiosity,
Right.
Because it was the way that he would explain it. He was excited about it. He was fascinated. He
Right.
was just like every day in class. He was never tired.
Yes.
It's like physics gave him energy.
Right,
It was
right,
yeah. So, and then I've also heard that people who've taken your classes, you're sort of the same way. And so I hate that I've never taken any of your classes.
Yeah,
but
same.
I do get a little bit of that when coming
Right.
to your office
Sure, yeah,
and speaking to you.
Yeah, so as I said, my goal is to, again, just to impart, try my best. It's not like, I always try to paint my picture that I'm a professor, but a professor does not mean that you know everything. It means that you're actually open to learning. So when I interact with my students, they are working on research projects, it's an exchange. It's not like I'm telling them that because I'm a professor, I need to be the person that knows everything. Every day I'm learning and improving. Even like right now, we have a project that we're working on. As a matter of fact, we're trying to investigate a new material that is called germanium sulfide, which is also a two-dimensional material. So that's in the process. Actually, it's almost to the point where we're going to submit the work for review and publication.
Oh, that's awesome.
You said it's a 2D?
It's also like a two-dimensional material.
And you said it was called what?
Germanium sulfide.
Germanium sulfide,
Why isn't it germanium sulfine?
So the E and E is talking about double bonds, right?
So generally they use sulfate. Okay, that's a really good question. So The ene, which is ENE.
Okay.
ENE, for example, graphene, phosphorine, germanine.
Okay.
Those enes are used for what we call elemental two-dimensional material. So elemental means that it's only made of one type of atom. So, for example, graphene is only made up of carbon. Phosphorine is only made up of phosphorus. Silicene is only made up of silicon. Now, when I have a compound material, which is germanium sulfide, it's a compound material. It's made up of germanium and sulfur. We don't really give it a name. Like,
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there is so germanine is two-dimensional, is flat.
Yeah.
But germanium sulfide, or maybe MOS2, MOS2 is called molybdenum disulfide. We don't call it something in,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of a...
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think So she had Emily had another question. What do you think is the most underrated physics concepts in terms of public/popular interest?
What idea from physics do you think should be more out there?
I think...
Because you know how pop science they have like
Yes.
space time,
computer.
quantum physics, quantum computers, right, and all that. Like, and that's the popular science, right? But what are your thoughts on like other underrated ideas?
I would say, again, that's a pretty difficult question because, again, if you think about some areas like...
Your personal one, your personal take.
my personal take...
It could be biased. It doesn't matter.
I mean, my personal take, again, I think for me to answer that question, I need to look at it more like a broad. I think my personal take is that we need to be able to create more awareness for physics in general. Like, for example, people should be exposed to physics right from, middle school,
From the jump.
high school.
So just classical physics.
Physics in general.
Oh, in general,
People
doesn't
should be
matter
more
what
exposed
physics.
to physics, because physics in general, right? Some people, the first exposure that they get about physics maybe is something related to astrophysics, astronomy. Like maybe they've seen something, like some movies, like Gravity, or something that sparks.
Like,
But generally, I would say that, as a matter of fact, there is a professor, I think it's in the University of Texas at Austin, that he started this mission where, actually he's a consultant, and he's working with, he's working with states.
wow.
Okay.
So he's working with states to try to improve the number of high school graduates that have been exposed to physics.
Physics informed.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And the reason for this is a big project, and the reason is because the studies that have been conducted, right? So he's collected data from across the states. Look at students, people that were exposed to physics, how their pathway towards engineering and their success, and so he's collected all this data. And the conclusion is that if we don't expose students to physics way earlier, that affects them. For example, even if they're going to major in engineering, it impacts them a lot. Because sometimes some students, when they come here, maybe they might be excited about engineering just because it sounds good. Like, okay, I'm an engineer, I can solve, but they don't know what it takes to become an engineer, right? You need to be really good at problem solving, critical thinking. So these are skills that if you can expose them right at the beginning, get them to be excited about physics, then later on, I think they could be successful. So that, to me, I think I don't think I have like a specific area of physics that I should really push for.
So not even solid state, not even condensed matter physics, just like in general, you're just like, any physics will work. You just want more physics out there.
I think more people should be exposed to what physics is all about. Like, people should be more aware about physics, because physics is not really known. Like,
You feel like physics in general is underappreciated.
it's on that, right, yeah.
So, is there a certain place that someone should start? Like, if they're, if they haven't gone down the rabbit hole of physics. Because I always think people should go first to the history.
And I usually think people should go towards like practical inventions that comes with it, you know.
So, but just before I answer your question, let me step back a little bit. If you think about, so there's a concern that if we think about it, right, there is some problems in science and engineering where it requires fundamental knowledge, right? So there is some things, for example, if you think about, let's say the LED, the blue LED, to solve that problem, right, it starts from the science, which is like the basic science. So every technology has the science, and then you have the application, right? So it starts with the science, with all these things that is being done at the university, research, publication. Then eventually it gets to the point where you can really use it to be a technology, right? Now, if you think about even something as simple like, let's say, this idea about quantum computers, right? If you trace it back to even the idea of people started to think about
quantum physics,
a spin, like what is the spin of an electron? This was just a concept, right? Just a theory.
Even today, we don't know what this spin.
Right, but eventually people are starting to use this type of things to some applications and so. So what I'm saying is that I feel like we need to also train the next generation of people that can do research in fundamental
theoretical foundational physics.
Right. Yeah. Not just, engineering is also good, but we need some people that can do PhDs. They can become postdocs. They can become independent scientists that they can apply to fund. They can apply to get funded and so on.
So what you're saying is you rather have more scientists first, and then engineering can come later.
I think both are important. So again, you need to know what you are interested in, but there should be more. Again, I think
science enthusiasts.
Right. I think also because for the fact that a lot of students have to pay out of their pocket. And
it's true.
There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Because I went to school mostly on scholarship, so I didn't have to, pay student loans and so on. But for someone that has to pay out of pocket, there is a pressure that, okay, I really want to get this done so that
I need to get a job, pay back the student loan.
Right. So, because if you want to take it like to the point where like a PhD, it takes time, right?
Yeah.
Bachelor's, master's.
Do you think that's why most students go for industry, not academics?
I think that contributes a lot.
A major factor.
If you look at, this is based on statistical analysis, right? If you look at most universities, look at the science and engineering departments, most of the faculty members are international, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is because when international students come here, there is a pressure for them to go through and get the PhD, right? So for example, maybe if you have a master's, you cannot find a company that can file for you. So at the end, it's mostly a majority of people that get a PhD in engineering and science, these are mostly international. Yeah. And you can even tell from the faculty members here at the School of Engineering, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I feel like there should be more, even if it means some kind of way that we can provide some incentive.
So like more scholarships.
So more domestic students should be going to PhDs, right?
Yeah.
Because if not,
it's gonna get
what is the future of fundamental science and research? And we're going to lose this. If everybody just goes directly to the industry.
Yeah, because everyone just wants to get out of college.
To get out of college, to start, making some money, pay off some debt and so on. So I feel, obviously, it's something that it takes a lot of patience to get to the point where
you
get a PhD, but. I feel like it should be encouraged. More people should be doing PhDs and so on. Yeah.
So kind of back to the main question though. Like,
right.
Is there a certain place you should start? Like, is there, or is it just about starting? Is it just like? I guess my question is more like, well.
Where should you look first?
But then also, like, because I also feel like the reason why I started reading about the history,
Yes.
and it sort of intrigued me so much is because of my curiosity.
Right.
So so my question kind of is like, where do you think your curiosity comes from, and where do you think curiosity itself comes from? And
Do you think it can be fostered?
I think. Okay, that's a really good question. For me, I could say I think curiosity can be fostered. So first, you need to have someone like a mentor, like someone that can help you. And because think about it, I can give an example from soccer. Because actually, soccer is something that it should have been part of this conversation.
He's a soccer player.
I thought about bringing it up back a while back.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been here if I had taken that pathway. So when I was in Italy, I used to play
Soccer.
like a local club.
Wow.
And the owner of that facility, like I was 20, 21, 22. I was very thin, very athletic, fast. So I was really, really good. So soccer is something that I've been playing ever since I was little. It's the main sport in Cameroon. So when I was in Italy, this guy saw, like, he was behind me. He really wanted me to like join the local. So in that city, they had like it was in the second division, but he wanted me to start there and then see how I can make it to the Italian professional.
Wow.
And he kept putting me, the pressure was just like incredible. But I had to like put these two together, and I said, like, at the end of the day, I said, no, like, what brought me here, I want to get it done. Like, I don't want to start something and leave it halfway. So I decided the academic pathway. I could easily have gone into soccer. So soccer is something that I could talk about it the entire day. Like,
Yes.
Because it's my first love. I love it. I play the sports and I really enjoy it.
Do you still play it?
I still play, but not as frequently because I haven't really found a good group.
Someday we should play it because he's also good
Yeah,
at
we
it.
should.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we had the science, like we had a College of Math and Science soccer team, and we
okay.
played against. So there was a tournament
Yeah, last
where we
semester.
competed,
there was a
right?
tournament.
Yeah. So that was really good. Yeah, but anyways, a good mentor.
Yes.
Why? Because you could be skillful, but if you don't have someone
Guiding him.
and let me say this because like I know a lot of soccer players that were really good, but then they played in the league probably 1 or 2 years, made some really good money, right? Now you have all this money, you feel like you're on top of the world, you became distracted, you're not training as much, suddenly they went downhill. Now compare that with somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo. He is 41, almost at the point where people should be retiring.
Yeah.
But each time that he steps on the soccer field, do you see like his outlook, the energy that he has?
Yeah.
It's almost as this is his first game. He's playing each time that he steps on the field.
He's still quick.
It's like, this is my
extra.
first game. I want to give my best. The passion is there. The curiosity is there. So that's it. I would say, again, skills, but someone that can also help and guide you to make sure that, you could be very skillful, but it takes a good mentor, like someone that can give you the right direction. And I think that's what I do with some students that I mentor. I try to show them some opportunities. For example, there is something that is called the REU, which is a research experience for undergraduates. That's a very good program for people that are interested in, research and graduate school, because it exposes you to a lab, for you to work in a real project.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that. Is that available for internationals? I don't think so. It is?
I think it should be available for all. Yeah, it should be available for international students as well.
Good.
Yeah.
So, I know for me how I went about that, but for you, how should someone go find a mentor?
Again, it goes back to curiosity, right? So if you really want to get into, research and everything, you need to be proactive. So it means that
Because I'll be
Talk
honest,
to
like,
some professors
the
and-
movies make it
Yeah.
feel like, oh, someone who is sort of a mentor type person,
Right.
just finds you and grabs you and says, "I'm going to be your mentor," and then from there it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
but in reality, from what I've experienced, anyways, I've had to go and search.
You have to go and search. So you
Yeah,
need to
same.
go around and talk to professors, ask them what they're doing, challenge them, ask them if you could be part of what they're doing, contribute something. I feel like, some kind of research experience in addition to classwork is also important, because research gives you, it's always, the way you approach research is you need to approach it with the mentality that you don't know. You don't know. Like, okay, when I started this project way back in 2019, I mean, to be honest with you, when I applied for the research grant, and I got, the grant was selected for funding, I was really, really stressed up. I was really, really stressed up. There were just a lot of unknowns. This is the first time for me to direct a research program, right? How am I going to do this? How do I hire students? How do I train the students? Am I able to publish any papers or some? There were a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is the way to approach science, right? You need to always be thinking about not knowing, and then trying to know a little bit day by day, or to put it in a way that Elon Musk always says that always assume that you are wrong, then become less wrong over time, right? So when you're trying to solve a research problem, you don't know what you're doing. You're making errors here and there. So when I worked on that project of, the adsorption of DNA nucleobases on, let's say, titanium carbide with Micah. So Micah is now a graduate student at, not Micah, but Michael Walker. He's now a PhD student at OU.
Ooh.
But when we started this project, again, as I told you, that was a new material, never been done before in any modeling calculation. So if you go back and ask Michael, we spent almost 6 months on failed calculations.
Failed.
Failed.
Ouch.
We were doing the calculations, the results were not looking good. Doing the calculations, results are not looking good.
Yeah.
To a point where it was like I had to revisit the hypothesis. I had to. It was like when we're going into the research, this is what we knew that we're going to obtain. That's our predictions were guiding us towards a particular result, and we're not getting that result. Then I revisited the hypothesis, and then I said, we need to change something here. It's like, no, there is not just one mechanism. Because for graphene, right, the mechanism is always called adsorption. It's called physisorption. So physisorption means the graphene can get closer to so the DNA molecule can go closer to the graphene, but there is always some kind of balance between attraction and repulsion, so that it never really binds. It's called physisorption. Physisorption, it means that it's not a chemical bond. It's called physical interaction. And this physical interaction is driven by the van der Waals forces. So no matter how you bring the graphene close to the surface, right, when you run the calculation, it always kind of repels. So it's an interaction where there is a balance between attractive and repulsive forces, so attraction cannot take over 100%. So we're expecting a similar result for the titanium carbide surface, but we're not getting it. So we actually saw two types of interaction mechanisms. So number one is physisorption, so you can get the physical interaction, but you can also get a chemical interaction where there is a real covalent bond formation. And these two extremes of the interaction depends on how close the DNA can get to the surface of that.
So eventually, the DNA could bind.
It could bind.
What?
Could bind, yeah. So again, this would mean that if I'm making a sensor, right? So on the sensor, I need to drive the DNA. So if the DNA is moving in some direction, right, I need to make sure that, for example, if this is my DNA and this is my device, I need to make sure that there is some cut-off distance where the DNA cannot go below that distance. Otherwise, it just clumps around, and then I cannot really detect. Because the signal will just be like, all over the place.
Okay, but you also need it close enough.
I need it close enough to detect it, right?
Yeah. So would it? Because what is it called? Titanium.
Titanium carbide, yeah.
So would it be dipole interactions or hydrogen interactions?
It would be some kind. It's mostly like so the physical interactions that happen at the larger distances are mostly like van der Waals.
Yeah, van der Waals and the
and then as you get closer, it becomes more like a covalent,
like ionic,
kind of
polar.
mixed ionic covalent, but it's really like
So the electrons do actually carry over.
Right, the electrons carry over, so they form some like charge transfer, chemical orbitals, and so on.
Wow, that's awesome.
And as I was telling Josh, if you go on one of these like large language models, like maybe ChatGPT, and just ask like, okay, how does DNA bases interact with titanium carbide? If you put it on an AI system like that, it's going to reference my work. So it means that it's the first work. It's like one of the first research that actually establishes this fact.
That's awesome.
Here at UCO, man, that's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
That
Pioneer.
If you look at that paper, I think it has almost. It's been going up now. The last time I think it's getting to 8. By the end of this year, I think it's going to have like 20 to 30 citations.
Yeah,
because it was just published.
Is there a link there to it?
That paper is actually an open source paper, so it means you should be able to.
Oh yeah, I found it.
You found it? Okay.
I found it.
I'll link it in the
Discord,
in the notes for this episode.
Yes. This is awesome.
So I don't want to take too much more of your time.
How much time? What time is it right
It's
now?
2:38. 2:38.
I could do maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay,
so, perfect.
So I hope this isn't a long answer, but I feel like it's going to have to be a long answer. But we were talking about stars before you got here.
Okay.
We love cosmology. We
Astrophysics.
love space.
Right.
And so you want to preface the question?
Which one? Stravinsky?
Yeah, the Stravinsky one.
So apparently there is a star called Stravinsky star.
Yes.
It is discovered by a guy named Antonio Stravinsky. So Antoni Stravinsky. And this star, what they found is it is slow rotating, but it has super strong magnetic fields than usual, and it's rapidly oscillating. And what they also found is there's low amounts of iron and nickel, but it has higher amounts than usual of super heavy elements like strontium, holmium, thorium, even uranium.
Right.
So there's a lot of hypotheses because what's strange about this is that when stars form, they fuse all the way from hydrogen all the way to iron and nickel, and then they supernova.
Right.
So super heavy elements after iron is not usual, especially for for stars. So what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you have?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, do you have any hypothesis, or if you're familiar with some level of astrophysics, like what do you think this is?
I would say that's a good question. But again, I would say that's a little bit outside of my area.
Yeah.
So I might not be able to. Instead of trying to guess something that might end up being wrong, I think at this point it's better to just say I don't know.
Fair enough.
Okay.
But it could be something that I can learn about it.
Yeah.
I can do some research and something, but I don't think I can really give you like a reliable.
I actually have questions that might be right down your alley, actually.
Okay, sure.
Because for example, you talk about excitons,
Right.
And excitons are known as quasi-particles, right?
Right.
So recently, I've been hearing. Let me find it. Recently, I've been hearing a lot of talk about which one is it? Exciton? No, it's a different type of quasi-particle.
You want me to ask my question?
Yeah, you can ask it. Let me find it. I kind of lost it.
So, speaking of physics and the future of physics, right? Do you think that there is and I may have asked you this question before, but I think it's an interesting question. Do you think that there's an infinite amount of knowledge, or do you think we will one day
Hit a wall.
Be able to understand the whole universe in terms of physics?
That's a very
So there's a popular sci-fi question, which is the ultimate answer to the universe 42? Have you heard of this before?
It's like a meme reference.
It's from a sci-fi movie. But anyway, yeah.
I mean, honestly, my opinion is that physics is a good method that gives us at least some way to quantify something. Quantify something.
Physical phenomenon.
Right. Yeah. But again, with that said, I feel like the universe is just too vast. And, I don't think we can really understand. Okay, so this is what I believe. There is understanding and there is truth, right? And I don't think there is anything that is truth, like truth. I don't think so. I think there is understanding, which, understanding gives you the room that things can evolve. For example, if you think about it, maybe if you go back, thousands of years ago, when people started to think about this idea of, let's say, atoms, that it seems like maybe there might be some little building blocks of stuff. But if the early models of the atoms were just like one lump of mass, right? And that was it. With that, they could explain some things here and there. Then later on, with some experiments, people started to say, oh, okay, now it seems like, as a matter of fact, this atom can actually carry some charges or something. And then later on, they say, okay, now it seems like there might be positive charges and negative charges. Then later on, it came up like, okay, how are the positive and negative charges distributed within the atom? Is it just like, some kind of uniform distribution? Then again, some experiments show that it seems like the positive charges are only concentrated within a really small area of space, which is the nucleus, right? So I would say that understanding keeps getting better, but I don't think there is anything like truthful, like something that is just like, okay, we know everything. For me, I don't think so. I just feel like understanding is going to get better.
But
with time.
It's asymptotically close to truth, but you don't think that will be truth?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there would be truth as t goes to infinity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So asymptotically close.
Yep. But
never.
But what is t equal? But what is t equals to infinity? That's a question that I don't know, because like
how long that is?
How long that is? Like, what is t equals to infinity?
Oh.
But eventually, this is what I know. I know that as t goes to infinity, obviously we're going to know more. I mean, I can write. There is one equation that I just thought about it. As t goes to infinity, we become God. As t goes to infinity, we become God. Yeah, because at some time, we should be able to know everything that we can control, whatever. Like, I think we can live forever.
But we don't know when that will be.
We don't know when that will be. But you can think about it, right? Maybe at some point, like, we can cure all kinds of diseases, everything. Like, even to the point where as we get more into, like, genome, we can know everything about the human genome. We can solve all kinds of diseases. It's just like understanding is going to get better. And eventually we'll be able to, like, because I don't think our future is based only on Earth. I also believe that the universe was created for a reason. So I believe that as time goes on, we know how to, we have new technologies that will let us explore other areas. So now, for example, you know how, like, when you talk about some people that have some net worth, right? Like, say Elon Musk or something. there will be a time when somebody is going to say, hey, I own that planet, right? I own Earth. I own 3 Earths. Right? It's just going to keep
Growing.
That's my vision. Like, that's what I see.
Hopefully.
Things will just keep
growing.
And I feel like if you really think about it, like, that's the purpose of life, right? Is to explore
and grow
and
expand.
So just keep building and knowing and understanding.
Yeah.
And that's just going to keep, there is never no end.
Mm-hmm.
As t goes to, but where is t equals to infinity? I just don't know.
Okay, I got my question already. Okay,
Yeah.
but before I get into that question, I'm just curious about your idea, because you said that you do think humans, the purpose of life is just scale, just keep scaling, keep growing, keep learning.
Yes.
Because at least in the best models of cosmology we have right now,
Right.
we are heading towards heat death. So, so the universe will eventually die because of thermodynamics.
Right.
All usable energy will eventually die. What do you think of that?
I think that's also a really good question. But again, that question could be answered if we kind of go back in time and try to understand where the universe came from.
The Big Bang.
Right. Mm-hmm. So there is a physicist is called Roger Penrose.
Yes, Roger Penrose.
So he has some ideas. So he's not a really big fan of the
heat death.
inflation.
Oh, yeah.
He has some ideas that,
Cyclic conformal cosmology.
Right. For example, he's not saying that the Big Bang could not be possible, right? But he has some theories about how, like, what was there before the Big Bang. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a good question, which I don't think is possible to answer. Mm-hmm. But again, I think everything there is some kind of like a cyclic
cyclical
kind
behavior
of nature that is tied to things, which means that if the universe eventually dies, maybe
it'll come back again.
Or maybe there is this concept about like
multiverse,
parallel universes or something, or things like that. So maybe, again, think about this. Eventually, I don't think life is going to be sustainable on planet Earth, right? So because, population increases, we're using resources and things like that, all these things about like, global warming. I feel like just before it gets to that point, maybe we figure out something, like we find another planet that we can move to, and then the Earth becomes, uninhabitable or something like that.
Yeah.
I think we could apply the same kind of reasoning to the universe. Like, the universe is eventually going to die, but maybe before it dies, we figured out something, some alternative universe.
Yeah.
Actually, there's been some theories about creating new universes. Like,
wow.
Creating new universes?
like,
Oh, wow.
I've read something. I can look up some references where some scientists are claiming that they can actually create a universe.
Like, cause a Big Bang?
In the lab, right? Something like that.
Interesting.
So again, these are open questions that makes things to be exciting. Right?
Yeah.
Just things that you cannot really imagine.
Yeah. To be fair, heat death is 10 to the power of 100 at least years away.
Right.
So 10 to Google years, right? So it's so far away, we probably have enough time to figure it out. Like, humanity modern humanity only existed, like writing, for example, existed less than 3,000 years ago.
Exactly.
So we already figured out so much. Hopefully we can figure out the Asimov's final question by then. Can we reverse entropy? Someday.
And also things happen. So things happen in some kind of time scales that sometimes it's hard to
predict
things, because, for example, in an atom, so there is something that is called femtosecond dynamics.
Oh yeah.
Which I think it's been going towards. So before it was picoseconds, and then now it's femtoseconds, which is like 10 to the negative 15. And it's believed that so if you look at the hydrogen molecule, right, there is 2 electrons. Now, using quantum models where you see electrons can kind of like tunnel between the two protons and so on. Now, there's been some estimates where this tunneling time is of that order of picoseconds. So it means that if you want to, so these things are moving in the picosecond, this femtoseconds range, that's 1 out of 10 to the 15.
Yeah.
So if you try to zoom that in, so 1 second, right? So 1 second compared to 1 femtosecond is almost like the age of the universe compared to the human lifespan.
More than that.
Because let's say 14 billion years is what, about 10 to the 11 or something like
No, 10 to the 1
billion.
billion is 9. 10 to 9.
Yeah, and
So 10 to about 10.
10 to about 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10.
So it's even more. So if you think so these things are happening in some scales that, it's kind of really hard to, so for us as humans, we're looking at something like 100 years. That's just like a snapshot.
Yeah. And in the 2023 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to a team for attosecond physics.
Attoseconds physics, right? Yeah.
That's even
It's
faster.
even faster, right?
So it's on the order of magnitude to the 10 to the power negative 18.
Yes.
So there's phenomena that happen at
Right.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's believed that at this level,
You can capture electrons in
you can
motion.
actually see electrons that are moving, and you can,
Wow.
like in real time, you can see a chemical reaction. Like, for example, you take your salt, you put it in water, you can in real time.
You can see the dissociation.
electrons moving and this.
So do you think it's infinitely deep?
Oh,
And
yeah.
maybe even infinitely large, because we just keep looking down and down and down, and we get smaller and smaller atoms. Do you think we're just going to keep on digging, and there's going to be smaller and smaller things?
Well, theoretical physics stops us at the Planck scale.
Yeah, and then also again there is
2025.
there are some aspects of life where you don't need those details.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you go to the lab and you do some chemical reactions that you don't need to even think about, you don't need to think about those like fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
But physics, I think physics is all about the how and the why. But yeah, I think the humility, like you should always be thinking about. So, like I always think about myself as. Like every day, what I carry is that I don't know anything.
Like Socrates.
Yes,
I know
always
nothing.
carry that with me because even like the research that I'm doing right now. So yesterday we had a Zoom meeting. We're just like bouncing off ideas with some of my collaborators and so on. And sometimes when you just by talking with them, you kind of like see some things that you are missing, some areas, some weaknesses. You identify some things that you need. So I feel like that's a mindset. Like every day, as they say, every day you're trying to plant seeds, right? So every day should be you're planting seeds. Like you're trying to get better, you're trying to learn something new, you're trying to improve yourself, you're trying to explore. And I feel like that's the approach. Just because we are so insignificant, right? Like we only have a limited time. You cannot do anything. You can learn a little bit of condensed matter physics, but again, do you know how the DNA works? Do you know about biology? Do you know about cancer? So knowledge is just infinite.
Yeah,
right?
feels like it.
There's always something to learn.
There's always something to learn.
So is there a field or specific topic that maybe is outside of the research that you're doing right now that you would love to eventually do some research on?
Like a side hobby research.
Or
I mean, honestly, I love space. Like, I like to really learn. I wish I,
Just had some time
really
doing
like
it.
explore. Because if you think about, like, I think I spoke with you where a few days ago, I think a couple of days ago, where I told you about my belief in randomness, like this
Stochastic, statistical
stuff, right? And the universe always kind of teaches me about n, like large large numbers. Like I believe in n, like large n. So I believe that, for example, you could have a pretty small successful probability, right? But if you can make your n large, you can still succeed in getting to your goal.
No matter how infinitesimally small.
Exactly. And there are some theories that explain life, like, for example, the origin of life, that are based on this type of, like,
Statistical.
something that could be maybe 10 to the power, the success rate could be 10 to the negative, maybe 10 to the negative 10, for example, right? Or let's just say that the chance that if you take the universe, the age of the universe, which is 10 to the, let's say
10 about
10
10.
to the power 10, all right? Now, you can break this into intervals of 1 year. Now, and then you can assign something like, what's the probability that life could form maybe 1 year after the Big Bang, 2 years after the Big Bang, 3 years after the Big Bang, right? Now, you can see that probability. So maybe 1 year after the Big Bang might,
Still too hard.
it could be zero almost, right? But that probability, even though it's really small, if you kind of stretch it over that length of 10 billion years, right, you can get something could work, even though the probability per year could be small, right? But it's a matter of the length of the time.
That makes sense.
It's a matter of the length of it. That's why, as I said, even when I approach life, I try to look at
Statistical
a
significance.
lot of statistical stuff, like just so random. That's why I told you that sometimes when we do some things, like there is times even when we have this conference that came to UCO, the conference that you guys helped me out with, the photovoltaic. Remember that thing that you guys helped me
Photovoltaic
set up?
science. Yeah.
I had a student that did a project on that research, I think, Basant. He did a poster presentation. And I took that information and I posted it on my LinkedIn, just said congratulations to, my student. Now, through that, there is some people that are doing research in machine learning that contacted me, and then we formed some collaboration, right? So those type of chances, I take those chances every day, like and some papers that I've published, when I go to conference, I meet someone, I ask them what they're doing, I say, okay, I'm working on this, can you do part C? So through that means, I've been able to stretch out
And expand research. Wow.
Expand my research.
That makes
because the paper that we recently published, right? I published this paper with a guy. By the way, how much more time do we have? What time is it right now?
we have a lot of time.
2:58, 3 o'clock. I mean,
Maybe I have
I think
a
me and
couple.
Albert have all day.
So that's up to you.
I could have stayed more, but I had to pick up my son from school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me wrap up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
The paper that I published recently, right? So this guy, his name is Dr. Ram Kumawat. He's from, he did his PhD in India,
Okay.
and then he moved to the US for his postdoc, but he is really an expert, to be honest. He's an expert in DNA sequencing. So
Be an interesting person to talk to.
there is an area, there is an area where we make it's called nano devices. So you model a real nano device that mimics, like a real device. But from the nano device, you can actually simulate the current voltage. So the current is a response when you apply a voltage, right? So you apply some voltage and you see how the current through the nano device is going to be. So this is called quantum transport calculations.
Wow.
Now, when I was doing my research, you cannot, when you submit your research, right, the reviewers are going to ask you, you've done this, you've done electronic structure, but why didn't you do device simulation?
Yeah.
They're always going to ask you that question, right? Because if you don't, unless you want to publish your paper in some really low quality journal, right, it's not going to get past that level. They're always going to ask you, can you do quantum transport? So when we did this work, right, I wanted to do quantum transport because I wanted to publish it in a good journal. So I reached out to him because I read his paper on phosphorin for DNA sequencing, and he did quantum transport calculations. So I reached out to him and I said, I'm working on this, and I know that, I've read some of your papers, you've done this type of calculations. Can you give me some ideas on how to go about this calculation? So he was very honest and he said, this thing So quantum transport is a pretty difficult calculation, right?
I bet.
He said that it's true. I can show you how to do it, but this is going to take you 2 years
Okay.
to learn how to do it, right? But I said, okay, I can do a PowerPoint presentation to show you what we've done, and then maybe you can, if you want to join the team, right? So I did my presentation, and he saw that this is pretty interesting. And he said, okay, now that you've already done electronic structure, you can give me your result, and I can use it to model quantum transport calculations. So with that, we could get the work completed within months instead of waiting for years, right?
Yes.
So through collaborations, and that's something that I've been very good at. So now I'm taking on this role as a manager where I build my team. So as I go around, I can find someone that can do A, I find someone that can do B, I find someone that can do C, and then I'm the middleman, but everything passes through me. So I'm the one that organizes our weekly meetings. I'm the one that organizes everything about our collaboration. I'm the one that creates the Google folder where we have all the research stuff and input files and everything. So everything passes through me, and I benefit most at the end because, like, as I'm working with everyone, I'm coordinating everything. I'm learning from them, from their inputs and their research. Even though I'm really busy, I don't have time to run the calculations myself. But with the team, I can direct stuff like, okay, we assign who does this, and then as they do it, we put the research together. I organize the Zoom meetings and everything and so on. And then I also contribute in the writing. So when we write the paper, I write my own section, I edit it, and so on and things like that.
So this shows that science really is about collaboration at the end of the day.
Science is all about collaboration. It's all about learning, keeping that open mind, always willing to say that you don't know.
Yes.
So when you're going to a team, don't go as if you know everything. Nobody knows everything. But if you have the passion and the curiosity, be open-minded.
Yeah.
I think those that are open-minded, they end up learning more. All right?
Yeah. Wow. Dr. Teo, thank you.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
After this, I'm going to come back.
Yes,
The experience is
we
pretty
would love
good. So-
maybe a more in-depth
Sure. Right.
episode.
episode on
Yes.
maybe a certain
Okay.
topic
All
that
right.
you feel really confident in
Sure.
going deep. But thank you so much. You're
All right.
you've been a mentor to me. You've
Inspiration.
inspired me.
Yeah, even me.
All right. Thank you so
Always
much. Yeah.
tell everybody what you told me back at APS Texas,
Right,
you just want to do your part.
Sure,
And that's rubbed off on me, and I'm just trying to do the same.
All right.
So thank you.
All right, it was a pleasure to be here, and as I said, you guys are doing a really good job, and I hope this is going to continue
Yes.
so we can get more students to be interested in physics, and we just keep the momentum going.
Yes.
Just let us know when you want to come back.
All right.
We'd be down.
All right, thank you so much.
Until next time. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.